Hello and welcome to London's Tech Manifesto for the 2020s, our virtual event for the candidates of London's mayoral election to share their views, their pitches with London and, let's be honest, the world's tech community. I'm Ollie Barrett, and it's an honour to be your host for this session. Now, you may already know this, but Tech London Advocates events are usually hosted at Here East. Well, right there in the heart of the Olympic Park. We can't be there in person today, but I'm particularly grateful to Here East for being our headline sponsor for this virtual event. So wherever you're joining us from, be it at home, in an office, in a park, you're very welcome indeed. Thank you for being here. Speaking of thank yous, this event is brought to you by leading industry bodies, think tanks and others. So let's just thank them for their contribution. Tech London Advocates, Tech UK, the Centre for London, London First, Here East and Plexel. We'll hear from all of those over the course of the next couple of hours. Well, you might have seen already, we have prepared the London Tech Manifesto. It's out there, it's online, and what it is a series of policy recommendations for the next Mayor of London, whoever she or he may be. And the idea really is to ensure two things. Firstly, that London's tech companies continue to thrive, but also that London remains open to ideas, to innovation, and to fantastic people. So please have a look at that tech manifesto. Tell us what you think, what resonates of the recommendations, what's missing, and what would you add? Really important, your engagement in this event, your questions, your reflections on what the candidates say. So please keep them coming in. I know that the next couple of hours are going to fly by, so let me tell you how it's going to work. We're going to hear from each of the four leading candidates in turn. They're going to share their response to the manifesto and their vision for the future of London tech. So you'll hear them in their own words, and you can comment and tell us what you think has struck a chord or what hasn't in your view. We're going to broadcast each of their responses, and then we've got this series of panel interviews. You'll hear from business leaders, you'll hear from investors, you'll hear from journalists who will reflect on what they've heard and give their own views about what matters most. So this is a significant moment. It's the only time in the election when the candidates will speak directly to London's tech community. Question: does this matter, and will it make a difference? Well, it absolutely does, because this is a time when London faces serious challenges. We know this, and we can all agree that a sector that drives job creation, it attracts investment and dominates London's reputation on the world stage is more important than ever. So just to give you a clue, we hosted Debate Tech in 2016. And we made a series of recommendations that we are confident informed Sadiq Khan's digital policy during the years to follow, including the appointment of a CDO, a Chief Digital Officer. You will have worked or come across Theo Blackwell for sure. So the point is, the messages we send today to the mayoral candidates really do matter. We are streaming across Twitter, across LinkedIn, across YouTube, and I encourage you to use the hashtag London Tech Manifesto, and please submit any questions you've got through the channels as they occur to you. And if you have to drop off at any time, I mean drop off the call, not drop off, then we will keep all of the content online for the next few weeks so you can catch up with it. Right, let's kick off formally with someone who will be recognised by most of you, I think. He is the founder of the Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates. I'm talking, of course, about Russ Shaw, CBE. However, you will probably know that he created one of the world's most influential grassroots tech networks, and he's worked with two administrations in City Hall to champion London as a globally competitive tech hub. Well, we're not able to get down to Here East today to be there in person, but Russ went down to that fantastic innovation campus earlier this month to bring Here East to you.
On behalf of Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates, we want to welcome you to our London Tech Manifesto event, featuring the candidates running to become Mayor of London on the 6th of May. My normal introduction is a little bit different this time. Due to the pandemic precluding all of you to coming here to Here East, we want to bring Here East to all of you. And I'd like to thank Gavin Poole, Helen Fisher, and the entire team at Here East for their help in supporting today's event as headline, partner, and sponsor. And in addition to Tech London Advocates, Here East, and Plexel, the event and the manifesto have also been delivered by Centre for London, Tech UK, and London First. We actually started working together way back in December of 2019, but we've been delayed due to the pandemic and the postponement of the London Mayoral event, now scheduled for the 6th of May. Let me also take a moment to thank all of the sponsors and supporters of Tech London Advocates. This includes Shoesmiths, Credit Suisse, Lakestar, KPMG, Pennington's Manches Cooper, Interaction, Russell Reynolds, Hiscox Insurance, Globalization Partners, and Senti Group. And let me also take a moment to thank HP and KPMG again for their support of global tech advocates. London's tech sector has come a long way since TLA launched 8 years ago this very month. London Tech is now consistently ranked as a top 5 tech hub in the world. And in 2020, we've seen record levels of funding invested into London tech startups and scale-ups in a variety of tech verticals, including fintech and blockchain, AI and data, edtech, proptech, health tech and med tech, software as a service, retail tech and e-commerce, gaming and creative tech, just to name a few. And we've also seen record-breaking tech IPOs on the London Stock Exchange since the very start of this year. And according to the recent Tech Nation report, there are now nearly 3 million people in the UK working in the digital tech economy, and we estimate that this includes well over 700,000 working across Greater London. And that represents about a 40% increase in job growth in just over the past 3 years. Even with the fantastic growth and investment that we've seen, London tech has its challenges. And let's face it, we are a sector that lacks diversity, and we urgently need more women and more people from the BAME community and the LGBTQ community and people with disabilities to come and work in the tech sector. We need an aggressive agenda around digital skills, and we need to reskill the workforce for the digital economy. We also need to ensure that London has world-class infrastructure with further rollout of high-speed fiber and 5G networks. These points and many others are captured in the 12 recommendations that are featured in the London Tech Manifesto. And in a few moments, you will hear from the mayoral candidates as we've posed a number of questions to them about the manifesto, and they will give their response to those questions. From the uncertainty of Brexit to the damage wrought by the pandemic, London, like so many other cities around the world, is facing a challenging time ahead. We in the tech community believe that science, technology, and innovation can form a key part of the recovery plan and economic growth for the capital, and we hope that whoever wins the London mayoral election on the 6th of May embraces these recommendations. My thanks again to the team at Here East today for hosting us in arguably what is the largest innovation zone in the UK. And we're sorry you can't be with us here today, but we do want to invite you to our Investor Showcase 3.0 on the 30th of June, focusing on Tech for Net Zero, right here at Here East. I hope you find the London Tech Manifesto a vital roadmap for the future of London tech and its economic growth. Many thanks for joining us for today's event, and let me hand over to Ollie again.
Thank you. That is, of course, the inimitable Russ Shaw, the founder of Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates, racing around Here East. Well, speaking of which, Here East has shown what a fantastic regeneration project and indeed innovation campus can achieve for London. Let's just think, even over this past year or so, it's introduced a new program to get young people into higher education. It's announced a strategy to become a leading centre for esports, and it's continued to welcome all sorts of new high growth, innovative businesses to its campus. And I keep noticing all sorts of organizations from across sectors making it their base, their HQ, their home. It has been supporting the local community to increase access to jobs, and it's been really curating a whole cohort of businesses ready to drive London's economic recovery. And that's why it's particularly good to welcome the Chief Executive of Here East here to our virtual event to share his vision. Please welcome to the screen, Gavin Poole. Gavin, hello.
Hi, Ollie. Thanks, Ollie. Thanks, Russ. Hello, everybody. It's a shame that this year we're not able to welcome you back. As both Ross and Ollie have said, it was 2016 when we held the first Debate Tech here. And in fact, that was the very first event, mass event that we held for Tech London advocates and the tech community at scale, which was somewhat of a surprise to me because we weren't actually expecting to use the theatre, but it was all configured whilst Russ and I were over in China doing some work with the current mayor at the time. Since then, in the last 5 years, there's been a significant change in London. And also that change has happened at Here East as well. The impact of Brexit, the impact of the pandemic, to name but a few. But also, as we've delivered our vision, the way that the sectors themselves have changed and morphed as we've gone on our journey. Now, our original ambition was to help play our role in turning the Olympic Park into the most significant regeneration project in London, and potentially the most significant regeneration project that's ever come out of a modern day Olympics. And I think we've done that. And I think we've created a home where academics, entrepreneurs, collaborators, innovators sit very comfortably side by side. And the common phrase we hear all the time is we underestimated the scale of opportunity when we came to Here East. And I think that's borne out by the volume of people that we have here. Here East is now a multi-award winning campus. It's for tech and innovation. Normal days has a community of over 4,500 people, clearly over the last year. That has gone down, but is now building again. And we have students, scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, technologists, those are specializing in VR, in esports, in data, in AI, in cyber, to name but a few, all within very fast growing and scaling businesses. We're home to many standout British success stories like BT Sport and Matches Fashion. We've taken startups like Fit, who pitched up with Andrew Rowan, who leads Plexel with 3 founders and a bit of cash, and now over 60 staff with their own studios and offices within the Here East community, having moved out of Plexel. We've also got the growing companies like Sports Interactive, home of Football Manager, embodied within Sega. And of course, from the cultural element, we have Studio Wayne McGregor, with Wayne, one of our leading choreographers and dancers that the world has ever seen. Our innovations consultancy, led by Andrew with Plexel Innovation, continues to go from strength to strength. We run the government's program for cybersecurity called Lorca, delivering over £13 million worth of value, scaling over 72 companies, and moving on to further success with the government in the cyber area. And as Ollie's mentioned, over a month or so ago, it came to culmination of our published esports strategy, which you'll find on our website, but looking at one of the fastest growing sectors, not only in the UK and Europe, but also the world, and how very quickly we are becoming an esports hub and cluster, working with the Olympic Park, using all those assets across Here East and the park as well. We think we're a vital source of growth to East London. We are a provider of many jobs, opportunities for the local community, but it's bigger than the local community. It's almost like an onion effect of the community, the wider community, the London, the nation, and then into the rest of the world. And we need to celebrate the impact that developments like Here East can have in London. And it's what makes London such a unique proposition for investors, for talent, for those who are seeking work. This is why I think it's a turning point for the future mayor of London. The next mayor of London is coming at a pivotal moment where we're coming out of a pandemic. We've got to forge our own path in Brexit, which we haven't been able to do because of the pandemic. And we've really got to fight for that growth of London. We need to learn the lessons from the global financial crisis. We need to look at those who want to commit into London. And if there's people out there agitating, saying, if you don't do this, we're going to leave, let them leave. Let those commit in who really see the benefits of being in a global capital city, if not the global capital city in Europe, and support the growth and support the sectors which are going to stay here and support the economic lift of our city. The mayors need to be pro-business, but not beholden to business. And that's why it's called on the next Mayor of London to support those who are willing to commit here for the long term. I think here we have a lot of knowledge from those who are in Plexel, those who are in the main Here East, those who are in our wider network and sit within Russ's network, to say that we will do everything to support them. We will do everything here East to be able to support the growth, the scaling of their businesses, to work through our networks, our collaborations, and connect people, and make sure that we provide access to the talent that we see in abundance across this capital. Ollie's mentioned already our commitment to the local community and the local development of that talent by our latest scholarship program, where we can get into young people in the local area and give them the degrees based at Here East and access into jobs based around us too. I think there is a real optimism about what's happening to us over the next few weeks and months ahead. Last week, we opened our bars and restaurants down on Canal Side. Many of you who have been here would have enjoyed the hospitality down there. It's impossible not to feel the optimism from people who are enjoying, particularly now that it's not snowing as it was on Monday, but now we've got the sunshine, which is out. And I think there's an element of feeling of turning to normality, and that is just going to accelerate as we go through this year and we get to live with the circumstances we currently find ourselves in. Already mentioned, I know that Russ and the team are looking to come back later this year. We are willing and really excited about hosting you all, seeing you on site and giving you the welcome that I know you've enjoyed with us over the past 5 years. But I hope you all enjoy the event today and look forward to what those candidates have got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Gavin Poole, Chief Executive of Here East. And I like the background. Gavin, once an RAF officer, always an RAF officer. Thank you to those of you who are already using the hashtag London Tech Manifesto. One or two of you using the hashtag Gavin for Mayor as well. Not the idea for today, but point taken. I think he'd be great. Now then, before we meet the candidates, you're probably wondering what happens before that. Right, we're going to talk about the London Tech Manifesto. It is an absolute zinger of a document. 12 very strong recommendations, reminds us that the London Mayor really matters, not least because of their £17 billion budget, but also their soft power, their power to campaign, to recommend, to shine a spotlight on things. And that's what we're going to talk about. What is in that manifesto? That's the subject of our first panel, to explain the recommendations in that manifesto. Let's meet our first guests, and as they pop up onto the screen, I'll tell you who they are. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, we're in a Zoom generation. We all give a quick wave. That's fine. It's not necessarily what they do on Newsnight, but that's all right. Andrew Rowan, please raise your hand. Andrew Rowan is the Managing Director of Plexel. You've had a plug and a half already. That's great. Anthony Walker, the Deputy CEO of Tech UK. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. Claire Harding is the Research Director at the Centre for London. Thank you for being with us, Claire. David Lutton, what a great role this is, the Director of Connectivity and Competitiveness at London First. David, thank you so much for joining us today. Priya Guha, a friend and colleague, sits on the advisory board of Tech London Advocates alongside me and other excellent and interesting characters, and she's also a partner at Merian Ventures as well, particularly backing women founders and leaders of great businesses. And finally, let's welcome back Gavin Poole himself. Thank you for rejoining us. Right, let's get into it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Claire, maybe you can kick us off. Just remind us why the London Mayor is such an important role, particularly for business.
Mayors.
Forgive me. Tell us.
It's about the mayor's budget and their ability to procure, including from some of London's amazing tech businesses. But more fundamentally than that, it's about their convening power. I think we look to the London mayor to set the vision of what we want as Londoners, our city to look like. And that's so crucial now as we move into both coronavirus recovery and Brexit, asking the question, what London do we want? And I guess for this group here today, how can London's amazing tech industry support us to get to the London we want and the recovery that we need?
Yeah, so that ability to bring people together, crucial, right? More of that as we go along. Anthony, you were involved in the last Tech Manifesto in 2016. So I'd like to get your view on what has changed in the last 5 years, and of course, how COVID has changed the landscape for London. What are your thoughts?
What's changed is really the context. I think we've had 5 years of really quite profound, breathless and breathtaking change. We've had the referendum, Brexit, we've had 3 prime ministers, we've had Trump, we've had growing awareness of the climate crisis, and we've seen big kind of geopolitical shifts with a sort of changing relationship with China. But through all of this profound change, we've also seen that tech has continued to be the dominant driving underlying force for change for individual households and businesses, but also for whole sectors and for public services. And we're seeing tech continuing to define the future, bringing new opportunities and new challenges as well. And London, despite Brexit and despite COVID, continues to be at the forefront of global innovation and entrepreneurship, which just goes to show, I think, the deep and powerful nature of London's technology ecosystem. So I think the question for the next mayor of London is, how are you going to put this amazing world-class tech ecosystem to use to create better outcomes for people, for society, for the economy, but also for the planet? Are you ready to work with the tech community to build the future we need? I think that's the big question that we really want answered today.
Good. Well, let's hope from our 4 leading candidates we get some of those answers. Andrew, what about Lexel? You do a lot of work bringing government and startups together, amongst other things. So I just wonder, what areas of public and private collaboration are you hoping to see from the next mayor?
I think it's a really important time, given all the disruption that Anthony's just mentioned there that's happened over the last 5 years. And with that disruption, we see lots of opportunity emerging, which is where we're trying to encourage big bets to be made that London can lead the world upon. I think it's really important to look at London in the context of levelling up, that London doesn't become introspective and focused on its own and within, but it becomes this gateway and continues to grow as a gateway, a very important global marketplace, a proof point on innovation and leading technology, and that global leading mega city that we all know it is and will continue to thrive. I think I'm most excited about those disruptive technology opportunities that we see the London tech scene again and again starting to dominate. I think it's taking the fintech movement that was over the last decade and using that as a template for us to grow upon, both within with emerging technologies like distributed ledger, but then beyond it through cybersecurity and seeing our position grow globally.
Yeah, very interesting and well worth looking at the emerging charter on sort of emerging tech coming out of City Hall, even as we speak. Fascinating progress on that. Now, David, London first. I know you're going to have something to say about data in particular, because you've worked closely with City Hall on the London Data Commission. So what do you want the next mayor's data strategy to look like? What are you calling for?
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. As a lot of the panelists have already mentioned, there's a lot to build on, and Theo's done some great work in the last years. But I think what we want to see now is to think about data as a piece of vital infrastructure for the city. And that means treating it as seriously as we might think about treating our transport network, which is our lifeblood. So the mayor's next data strategy, we'd like to see something really bold and new. So how about not just TfL, how about DFL, Data for London? A way to bring together all the resources, all the thinking and the expertise and data that exists out there, as we've talked about, but really importantly, harnesses that for Londoners' benefits. And we'd see that starting with a well-resourced, well-focused and interventionist Data for London board, and then building that charter that you just mentioned, a new London data charter that's going to bring together those public-private partnerships to work on some key critical challenges. So that's what we'd like to see.
Yeah, and so I see in the manifesto you're calling for a DFL, a Data for London board. That's one of the things you'd like to see, a good group of people around this big theme. Yeah, good. Right. Now, Gavin, how about getting back to work? Because, of course, getting back to work in central London, that feels vital to the recovery of the city economy. So what can the next mayor do practically to fuel that recovery? Gavin, what's at the top of the list?
I think that the recovery aspect of it is very much focused, as Andrew's mentioned, about the levelling up agenda, but not to be beholden to arguments across whether money is going to go from central government, is it going to Manchester, the northeast or southwest or wherever, but to say, look, London, the evidence is that London leads the way. Where money is invested into London, the ripple effect is significant, and we shouldn't ignore that. To make the case to say that you level down at your peril, but also to rise above the politics of central government versus city governments when you've got different political parties in different locations, and to say, look, London is an international global city of stature. It is the place that everybody looks to. It is a beacon. And therefore, the next mayor needs to build very strong international relationships in America, across Europe, into the Far East, and really cement London as the trading point, the trading capital in Europe. I'm talking about the political Europe. I'm actually talking about the geography of Europe. There is no other place like it, with government, with finance, legislators, regulatory bodies, with the finance and the HQs. And that needs to be built upon. And the mayor should not shy away from that. There's a whole load of domestic agenda pieces that others can look after, but the mayor is unique in the ability to step above that and work internationally and foster those relationships and make the case for London.
Okay, very good points. Thank you, Gavin. Worth noting, of course, the mayor has a business promotion agency, London and Partners. We might get views coming through on that, including its own Mayor's International Business Programme to help those London-based companies. Now, Priya, you are passionate about many things, including digital skills, diversity, of course, inclusion. I noticed the recommendation in the manifesto for a diversity czar, the words that we're using, particularly, I think, to work alongside the chief digital officer. Say a little bit more about how you'd like the next mayor to make tech more open, because we've got some pretty big problems to solve.
We absolutely do, Ollie. And the important thing for me about this agenda is the narrative that the mayor uses. Because what we want is the new mayor to be talking about why this matters, why we need an inclusive tech community, is because that will create better products. It'll create more growth for London. It'll create better performing businesses, as the data consistently suggests. So diversity is not a tick box. It's not some sort of superficial CSR exercise. This is about ensuring that the economic growth that London so will need in the months and years ahead to drive forward in the post-COVID economic recovery is one that's going to benefit everybody in London from that very, very inclusive tech community that this diversity czar could support and champion.
So this is one of the recommendations. Let me just draw out a couple of very quick themes. Claire, in terms of Centre for London's work, one of the points made in the manifesto is we need better collaboration across the UK's great cities. Just say a little bit more about that aspect, and I can see Anthony and others nodding to that. But it is important, isn't it? London has great power, and that, of course, comes with responsibility.
Absolutely, and as others have alluded to, I think it's really important to say that we can level up London and we can also level up the rest of the UK. It's really not about either or. And one of the really positive things we've seen in the last few years is the growth of devolution in some of London's other really big cities. And there's so much potential for a really creative, positive collaboration between London, Manchester, Birmingham, so many other areas. We can learn from each other, we can work with each other. Ultimately, we are facing many of the same challenges.
Yeah, and on that, David Lusson, London is a bit unusual, isn't it? Because in somebody else's words, it's really a collection of smart cities, really, 32 boroughs. TfL a bit unusual, spanning them all, but actually joining up action, so things like LOTE, the London Office of Technology and Innovation, probably points to the way forward. How do we do more of that?
Well, I mean, absolutely, it's a complicated space, and as you say, there's a lot of interest, and I think those examples like LOTE, where you're trying to bring people together, is a good step. But we feel that you need to bring the business into that, the business leaders into that discussion, and this is where we think in creating this Data for London board that brings together things like LOTE, the Chief Digital Officer, and business leaders, will start to kind of join up those parts.
And just leave us with a thought, though, particularly Anthony over at Tech UK. When a large business member of Tech UK says, just remind me why I should care about who sits in that Mayor of London seat, what do you say to them?
I think it's about setting the tone. It's about setting the narrative, but also, crucially, it's about purpose. It's about showing that we can apply technology to really address some of the biggest challenges that a world-leading global city has. So it's a fantastic kind of shop window for what tech can deliver. So an incredibly important role.
Yeah, indeed. And picking up on that tone setting point that Priya Guha makes so well. So we're going to hear from 4 of the leading candidates. So I'd like you to tell us, just in a short sentence or 2, what you're hoping to hear from the candidates today. They will talk for several minutes, but what do you most hope to hear? Priya, why don't you kick us off, and then we'll hear David, then Claire.
2 things from me, Ollie. One is inclusive growth that I've talked about with regard to technology. But secondly, about London being the global city with people at the front and centre of that story.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. David Latton.
2 things very quickly. Some kind of recognition that data is going to play a role in accelerating recovery, and some kind of commitment to funding for the reboot of the London data store, which urgently needs it.
Yeah, now indeed, investment in the London data store reputed to be increasing. So Claire Harding over at the Centre for London, what do you hope to hear?
What we'd really like to hear today is how the candidates will work with London's tech sector to solve the really big policy problems for our city. And I'd say the biggest one of those is the climate crisis.
Right, indeed. No, very well said. Gavin, what do you hope will be top of this list?
Big vision for international growth, foreign direct investment coming into London, opportunities to take companies overseas and to grow on that, and for the mayor not to get caught into local borough politics, leave that to the borough politicians, rise above it and punch London into the stratosphere.
Right, there is rise above it with his drone background. Thank you, Gavin. Very good point. And indeed, one of the recommendations in the manifesto, we want to see more, or the authors want to see more, inbound investor missions coming to land in London. Physical, virtual, you tell me. Anthony Walker, what's on your list?
It's purpose. It's about using technology with purpose to drive change. I want to hear less of just the championing and talking up the sector, and much more about actually how can we achieve really ambitious objectives within the time frame of when the next mayor will be in office. So purpose and ambition within set timescales.
Excellent. A whole chapter in the manifesto on this, on solving the big problems worth solving, purpose at the heart of London businesses. Finally, Andrew Rowan, Managing Director of Flexel.
Thanks, Ollie. So my priorities are people-centric growth, but in particular, recognising the divides, whether it be prosperity or diversity, that have been presented recently by all the chaos and change.
Yeah, absolutely. No, a fitting point to end it on. Well, thank you very much indeed, each and every one of you, for those pithy contributions. We will sit back and listen momentarily to those videos. But for now, thank you all for joining me very much indeed. Excellent. So those are the authors of the London Tech Manifesto released this week. Tell us what you think. Please use our hashtag London Tech Manifesto. What resonates? What recommendation do you put up to the top of the list? Well, let me tell you what's going to happen next. We have shared said manifesto with the leading candidates in the mayoral election, from Labour, from Conservatives, the Lib Dems and the Green Party. And we've asked them to record a short video sharing their vision for London tech, but specifically responding, worth bearing this in mind, to 4 particular questions. Firstly, how can tech drive the economic and social recovery after the pandemic? Secondly, how would you encourage greater investment in tech? Thirdly, how can London become a global leader in purpose-led tech and digital citizenship? And finally, what more can be done to increase digital talent in London? So 4 quite specific questions. Right, well, it's time to sit back, to make a note, to share what you think as we go through, because we're going to see each video in turn, I think in a particular order. Let me announce them as they go. I'll tell you who's coming up. The first video we're going to share is from our current no, it's not. The first video we're going to share is from Sean Bailey, who is the Conservative candidate of Mayor for London.
Thank you for inviting me to address debate tech and London tech. London's recovery from COVID presents a pivotal opportunity to support and embrace a tech-led economic and social recovery, a fresh start for London. I want to empower young Londoners from all backgrounds to realise their potential. City Hall should, with the Mayor's leadership, employ its convening powers to provide mentorship and support for aspiring entrepreneurs. I have said previously, I will, for example, increase the funding to MedCity by 500%, which fell by half under the current Mayor since 2016. This will finance medtech startups and research to build upon the UK's success in vaccine development over the past year. Under my plan to create 924,000 jobs, I will specifically create 11,000 green jobs. Using the local enterprise partnership, I will ensure that 50% of that funding is directed towards environmentally friendly businesses. From transport to finance to construction, I will usher in a new era of environmentally sustainable growth for London. This scheme will impact every section in London, rising the standards for environmental practice across London's diverse communities. LEAP funding will allow SMEs to rapidly change the way they do business, making them more sustainable, supporting the tech startup ecosystem in London. London can seize the opportunity that sustainability offers from the recovery and the pandemic quickly, but it will require bold political leadership, a fresh approach. I will also mandate that all new bus contracts will have to factor in a full replacement of diesel buses with fully zero emission buses. And I will offer interest-free loans to every single taxi driver with a black diesel cab in London to help them move over more quickly to modern electric vehicles. We have also to address the cost of living here in London in order to compete with comparable global startup hubs like Berlin. And that means building the homes that Londoners need desperately, including homes for millennial first-time buyers that they can actually afford. This will be essential to ensure that our young people can actually afford to live and work here and stay here. And that means investing in housing, transport and lowering the cost of living, not increasing council tax like our current Mayor. To additionally support job creation, I will invest in innovative green technology to support a green recovery and make London an international green tech industry leader. A green recovery from COVID has the opportunity to boost our economy, protect our environment and invigorate the workforce in more green industries, all of which will be key to reaching the government's goal of being zero carbon by 2050. We have in London many homegrown green tech solutions like PaveGen's kinetic energy tiles, which produce electricity by the weight of pedestrians' footsteps. I will harness the kinetic energy of Londoners in high foot traffic locations around London to provide off-grid green electricity for London streets and TfL stations. PaveGen tiles could be installed 4 abreast the length of Oxford Street. On an average weekday, there are 138,000 pedestrians on Oxford Street, rising to 500,000 at peak time. That could generate more than 3,200 watts per hour per day, which will provide electricity to Oxford Street even during long, dark winter nights. London is the greatest city in the world, and we need to take this opportunity for a fresh start. As Mayor of London, I will champion and invest in our tech sector to ensure that we are leaders in the field and London's best days are ahead of it. London will become the smartest city in the world because that's the first step to having a fresh start for London.
Right. Well, here comes the next one. Now, the next candidate you're about to hear from is, of course, Sian Berry, who's the candidate for Mayor of London from the Green Party.
Hi, I'm Sian Berry. I'm the Green Party candidate for Mayor of London. I'm currently a London Assembly member, and I'm also a councillor in the London Borough of Camden. I'm really pleased to be here today. I'm very sorry not to actually be there here east. It's a very exciting, vibrant place still, I think, even though there's so much going on in the world. And thank you for inviting me to Tech London Advocates as well. I'm a Londoner. I've been a Londoner for about 25 years, and in that time I've worked in an awful lot of jobs, and a couple of them have been in digital tech. I worked for a digital media company producing at the time CD-ROMs, which are quite an old tech now, but at the time were quite leading edge. And I also worked for a tech startup that span out from Imperial College, where I also used to work. The first question I've been asked to address is, how can technology companies drive the economic and social recovery after the pandemic? And this is such an important question. I think we've all committed to build back better and to build back greener. And the only way of doing that is to do things differently, to learn from what happened during the pandemic and to genuinely innovate and make things better. We can't just go back to business as usual. We know that business as usual wasn't working. I think the tech sector has a really big role to play in building back genuinely fairer, more equally and greener in London. I think one example of that is the gap that's been exposed in digital access across the country. We know that we're all depending so much on Zoom, which is where I am recording this now today. We're also depending a lot more on tech and tech companies running things like logistics to get us the essential services that we need while we had the lockdown. And the lack of digital access a lot of Londoners face is a real problem. One aspect of this that I'm really passionate about is making sure that we reuse and recycle more materials. And I think there's a genuine role to play in making sure that we reuse and repair and redistribute digital devices to the people in London who've been shown to need it. I want to set up repair centres, reuse centres in every high street. And I really hope that digital companies will be willing to help lend expertise and support to these social enterprises in these spaces as they develop. Now, the other questions are about supporting digital jobs, digital companies to expand. And I think that is the job of the Mayor, to make a proper economic recovery plan that builds on the industries that we know we're going to need when we build back better. In the Assembly, I've worked with my colleague Caroline Russell on supporting startup businesses and small businesses who are doing things and making things to get by better with a definition of a working rent. I think this concept is going to be really important as we go forwards, making sure that people who want to set up in business, who want to do things, have offices, who want to start up, get access to places that they can work at a working rent. That's very important. The other thing the Mayor does is manage the strategic development of big opportunity areas. I've looked, we've been looking at the Old Oakham Park Royal Development Corporation area. We've obviously got the place where you are now, the London Legacy Development Corporation area. I want to expand this concept and do more proactively as Mayor to plan new quarters, new parts of our city. And one part of our city I've had my eye on for some time, I stood for Mayor in 2016 and proposed this too, is that we really don't need an airport on the site of City Airport. It's right there in the city. This could be a technology-based quarter, one with homes, people living there, with new parks, new businesses, genuinely set up to be a tech hub right there in the heart of London, supporting jobs right through the east of London, as well as supporting new businesses. I hope your industry would be keen to work with me on that plan. The next question we've got is about purpose-led tech and digital citizenship, and that is something that I really do feel passionately about. I think data, privacy, making sure we have good data transparency, that there is good open standards within the industry so that we don't have too much data crowded in behind walls of having to pay for things, walls of intellectual property, where there's data that other businesses could usefully use to help people, where there's data that people are collecting that could be used for public purpose, and where the public sector is collecting data that could be released so that businesses that improve people's lives can genuinely use it. Now, the final question is about digital talent. This is incredibly important. We have a generation of young people who have lost their jobs. They are very, very worried about their future. And we have a real crisis in employment as well, in supply as well as in demand. We have Brexit. I hate to bring up the B word, but we have Brexit affecting the ability of firms to hire talent, the ability of people to move to London when they're fired up and excited about our creative and digital industries. There are barriers now in place for people to move. My job as mayor will be to provide practical support for migrants, to campaign for better rules so that people can move and work in our economy and contribute to the economic activity and the innovation within London. It's so important. But finally, the most exciting policy that I have, that I hope you'll really appreciate, is I want to invest directly in people. As a Green, I've supported a basic income for a very long time, a universal basic income to replace the benefit system. Now, this isn't within the powers of the Mayor of London, but we can run pilots and demonstration projects and trials to demonstrate the benefits of this. And one of the trials I want to run is of a creative autonomy allowance, an allowance paid to younger people, enough for them to live off to cover their absolute basic needs, to give more young people the freedom to get involved in creative and entrepreneurial careers. I think there's too many barriers to people at the moment who are on low incomes, who don't come from families with money, with a safety net, who can't work for free, who can't do internships, who can't maybe afford to train. The barriers to being involved in creativity, the arts and digital businesses are too high. And this is aimed to show through a trial, through a pilot, the ways it can open up opportunities and horizons for younger people in the city. Please take a look at all the different ways in which good technology, good data, good management of information, good organisation, all those things that the digital industries can do for us, including being creative, can support London's success in the future. I'm all about building a secure future for the city. I think you're absolutely integral to that. And if you vote for a Green mayor, you'll see a fairer, a greener, a healthier city, a healthier society, and a healthier, more stable economy as well. Thank you very much for listening.
Well, that was Sian Berry, and now we hear from the incumbent, the Labour candidate for Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan.
Hello everyone, it's Sadiq Khan here. I'm sorry we couldn't all be together in person tonight, but I'm incredibly grateful to the Centre for London for giving me the opportunity to respond to this series of questions about our amazing tech sector. Technology companies have a huge role to play, not only in helping our city bounce back economically from this pandemic, but in helping to build a brighter and more prosperous future for all Londoners. Our world-leading tech sector is a magnet for investment and talent from around the globe, creating the high-quality jobs that sustain our communities, the wealth that funds our public services, and the innovative new products and services that benefit businesses and help us to tackle a host of challenges, from the climate emergency to data security. That's why, if I'm re-elected, I'll continue to champion our tech sector, making the case for improved access to talent and standing up for a regulatory environment that supports and encourages enterprise and innovation. I know that London's tech sector can play a key role in building a better London after the pandemic. Ever since my election as mayor, I've been banging the drum for investment into our city from around the world. If re-elected, I pledge to continue shouting from the rooftop about the investment potential of our tech sector. London has gone from strength to strength as a global tech hub in recent years. We launched Tech Invest and the £100 million Greater London Investment Fund to ensure that London's most dynamic tech founders are able to access the resources they need. We published a major report on London's strength as an AI hub with Cognition X, and we've hosted events such as London Tech Week to show off the best our tech sector has to offer. There's no doubt that international promotion is more and more important, and so we'll continue to do all we can to ensure that London stands out as an attractive option on the world stage. You know, at this event in 2016, I committed to appointing London's first Chief Digital Officer, something I'm proud to have delivered. I know many of you have worked with Theo and are aware of the good work he's doing. We've launched events like our Civic Innovation Challenge, putting the power of London's tech sector at the forefront of solving our city's most pressing challenges, like the problem of air pollution. And we're exploring ways to harness public data and the innovative power of our tech companies to support digital citizenship. In addition, we've got plans to expand our Civic Innovation Challenge to encompass public services, research institutions, and the tech sector, bringing everyone together to make our city fairer, cleaner, and easier to get around. In the next 20 years, it's expected that 90% of jobs will require digital skills. So it's now more important than ever to mainstream these skills. I'm pleased to say that we're already on the right path. With our £7 million digital talent scheme, we've been able to provide many young Londoners with the digital skills that employers want. But we must now build on this progress. One of our key missions as we seek to recover from the pandemic will be ensuring that Londoners are able to access good work, something which will inevitably go hand in hand with the development of digital talent across our city. And I'll establish a £32 million Good Work Fund, creating 4 skills academies, focusing on the green, health and social care, creative and digital sectors.
Well, that was the incumbent. That's Sadiq Khan, current Mayor of London. Our final video comes from the Liberal Democrat candidate. That is Louisa Porritt.
Well, thank you so much for organising this virtual hustings-style event. If the past year has taught us anything, it is how important tech is in order for us to go about our lives, for businesses to continue operating when we could no longer meet physically in the office. And actually, I think this is a permanent change that is backed up by what businesses and organisations all across the capital are planning for: more remote working, more of a hybrid model in future. And I'm the only candidate, the Liberal Democrats are the only party talking about embracing that change and the opportunities that it will bring for the future. There's no doubt that our recovery must have tech at its heart. And I would do things like investing in digital infrastructure. I want to see 5G and gigabit internet rolled out across our capital, because that is fundamental to my vision for reinventing our high streets. I think we've got a real opportunity in front of us as the high street moves away from this old-fashioned retail-led model to make them more responsive to the services that local communities want and need. But we're going to need the infrastructure to support that. I want to see things like more shared working spaces on our high streets. I've actually visited a couple of them recently, some really great places in Homerton and in Richmond, respectively. And they are supporting small businesses, innovative businesses like yours in the tech sector, and helping them to grow and thrive. And that is really important for my vision for how we recover. And we've also seen over the last year the social role that tech can play, because without data, without technology, we wouldn't be able to test, trace and isolate. And we know that that is still going to be really important for how we manage the pandemic going forward. I also think that tech has a huge role to play in supporting a green recovery for our capital. We've got an ambition to become a zero carbon city, and tech is crucial for finding solutions to actually making that a reality. So I think that we can work together. I'm someone with a vision for the future, but I know that I need to work with you in the tech sector to make that vision a reality. And there are things I would do to support the sector. So I would create a London Apprenticeships Hub, for example. I would have a dedicated team at City Hall helping small businesses, including in the tech sector, to overcome some of the barriers that currently exist to creating apprenticeships via the government schemes that are in place, making sure that we increase the take-up of apprenticeships across the capital, and giving young people opportunities for the future so they can become the skilled workforce that you need in order to thrive and grow in the future. I've already mentioned shared working spaces and having the digital internet infrastructure that we need as well. That's how we're going to become a future-facing city, and how I believe we can help you. Tech is already a leading sector in London, but there is no doubt that Brexit has had a massive impact. And I was a member of the European Parliament for London, so I know how important that relationship with the EU is for our thriving tech sector, and that our future is European as well as global. So I will always be an advocate for a better deal. The Conservatives have let us down by not getting a deal on services. And I will always advocate for things like equivalence for the financial sector, which obviously uses and relies on tech as well. FinTech companies need these deals. Data adequacy, for example, I know that there is a provisional agreement in place, but there's also a risk that could get taken away. So I will be a strong advocate for that, and also making sure that these new arrangements benefit citizens as well, because the current data adequacy arrangements actually threaten to risk some people's rights from a privacy perspective, and we've got to get that balance right. I'll always be an advocate for free movement. I know how important that is for our city as well. And so I'll always be a strong voice for that with the rest of Europe. But also, I think that we need to look outwards to the rest of the world. Yesterday, I did the Jewish mayoral hustings, and we talked a bit about Israel. Israel is a world leader for tech innovation, and I made a promise that if I became mayor, I would be leading a delegation to look at how we can build up that relationship more closely, so that London and Tel Aviv are working closely together to lead the way in this area. I also think we should be working with tech companies to do things like improving digital inclusion for Londoners. We can use tech to enhance our democracy, to make sure that citizens are better included in democratic processes. And we should also be looking at how we can improve the services the mayor has responsibility for. So things like policing, obviously in a privacy-friendly way, and transport. How can we use tech to improve delivery of services for Londoners? I will be open to all of your ideas. Increasing digital talent is vital, obviously, if we want to protect our tech sector, especially in an environment where Brexit has threatened to restrict the talent that we could attract to London, and has put up some barriers to trade as well. I've mentioned my London Apprenticeships Hub so that we can develop talent here in London, Talent for the Future. I will also introduce a London passport so that the fellow Europeans who are working in the tech sector and have made London their home have an insurance, a physical document that proves their status to reside here in London, and it will make it easier for them to stay in and make sure that they still feel welcome as well. But also, I know that one of the reasons why we can attract global talent in tech and in other sectors as well is that London is an attractive place to live and to work, and that's what I will focus on delivering as mayor. So if you agree with this vision, then please vote Liberal Democrat on all 3 ballot papers.
Well, that was Louisa Porritt, the Lib Dem candidate, bringing the 4 videos to a conclusion. Thank you all of those candidates for sending their thoughts to us. Plenty to digest. And indeed, that's what you're doing using our hashtag London Tech Manifesto. Diana Diana Davidson, lots of focus on young Londoners. What about, she says here, as all Londoners work for a longer period of time, what about retraining older employees to extend their value within the local workforce? Great idea, Diana. If you've got ideas, thoughts, stuff that you liked, stuff that you thought was missing, please tell us. Mike Butcher, the legendary editor of TechCrunch, wades in about Sean Berry. Bold move to shut London City Airport and turn it into a tech hub. Yes, indeed. Sean attracts praise here from Ellie as well, saying that she was answering the questions just as she was asked to. But what do you think? What are some of your reactions? Well, lots to digest. I can see some of our leading journalists scribbling away from Sifted, from City AM, from the Evening Standard. We'll quiz them later, and indeed some of the country's leading investors too. But first, how about some of our tech leaders? Let's hear more from them as we welcome up our next panel, one and all. Welcome back, welcome for the first time to our screens. I can see lots of great and familiar faces. Flavilla Fongang, how great to see you. You're the creative, you're the founder of the creative agency 3 Colours Rule, and you also lead the Tech London Advocates working group, Black Women in Tech. Hello, Flavilla, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Nicole, great to see you. Nicole Lowe is a senior manager. She's working with KPMG, working with emerging giants. That sounds very exciting, but she's also head of KPMG Access, which offers expert support to fast growth businesses across the UK. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Ollie. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Phil Benson, an entrepreneur and co-founder of the UK Black Tech Innovation Group within the Tech London Advocates. Phil, I also think of you as part of the Urban Teacher Group as well. Have I got that right?
Co-founder Martin's part of the Urban Teacher Group. So yeah, he was one of the members of UK Black Tech. Yeah.
Huge fan of your work. Thank you very much, Phil, for joining us. By no means least, Amali de Alwis. You might recognize her, having led Code First Girls. She led Microsoft for Startups and is now, Amali, you kept this quiet, the Chief Executive of Founders Forum. World class. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm incoming, so I haven't officially started my job as yet, but in a few weeks, I'm really excited to be taking it on.
That's a brilliant match, by the way. I love it. No, congratulations. Right, let's get down to it then. What did you make of the candidate videos? I want you to be pithy, concise, as provocative as you like. Give it to me. Flavilla.
I knew you're going to start with me, of course, because you know that I'm one with a big mouth. I thought it was it was a bit fluffy, I must say. I was expecting a bit more from them. You know, I feel like I've read this book already. You know, they talk about different points that was really relevant, environment, you know, employment, but I guess it's a big problem that needs different solutions and different options. So yes, so that's for me.
So say a bit more. When you say a bit fluffy, what did you want them to? What did you want more of?
Yeah, so as I say, you know, when you think about the environment, for example, it's, you know, you can't solve the environment with one solution. So you have to think about it. When you think about employment, you know, I think about the BEM recruitment, you know, at the BEM community, or I think about young generation. So you can't have one solution to fix one big issue. And that's something that maybe I will give him a benefit of the doubt that we didn't have enough time and he couldn't go into details, but that's what we're looking for different new solutions, not the same message we heard before.
All right. Well, I think it's fair to say you weren't blown away in that case, Flavilla. Fair enough. Thank you for speaking your truth. Phil, what did you make of this?
Yeah, I agree with Flavilla. I think, you know, I was expecting, you know, we're post-Brexit, post-COVID, we need ambition. We need, you know, tech businesses are at the forefront of innovation. We're the ones who are going to be driving the necessary changes, the necessary income into UK PLC. And I think we just needed that bigger, bolder vision to say, who are we going to be? Now, London is obviously at the center of that. And London's going to powerhouse the rest of the UK. And there was no talks of, which was listed in the manifesto, about the links with other cities as well, homegrown talent. You know, we heard a little bit of environment, and I think environment, you know, everyone knows environment's a challenge and a big issue, and one that the UK government wants to, you know, be one of the leaders of. But it just felt like, you know, we were sort of revisiting the same old sort of speeches and rhetoric. And I think what we really need to see is a big, bold vision to say, you know, this is who we are. We want, you know, we've got China, we've got India who are going to be emerging, you know, so where do we sit now? You know, we're in a different position to where we were, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, even because of post-Brexit. So where are we as London, as a UK? Where are we going to sit within that? And I think we need to revisit that as a bigger vision, and then obviously then we can narrow that down. So, you know, environment's great, but as I say, homegrown talent, international talent. You know, we just need bold vision to really, you know, inspire us to move forward.
All right, crikey, you are a tough crowd, you lot, I've got to say. So Phil, then, which of them came closest to that bold vision, if you had to give them one of them the prize?
Well, I think Larissa, by saying obviously about the, you know, I think that was a big bold thing to say, you know, we want to create a big tech hub, and you know, but I didn't really, you know, I didn't really get that from any of the candidates, to be honest. You know, I know Sadiq mentioned about his 32 million in the Skills Academy, the 7 million in digital talent schemes. So they're important things, and I think they're crucial things to enable, you know, young tech talent and us all to sort of develop as one. But as I said, I was really struggling, and I think maybe that announcement by Larissa maybe was one of the sort of highlights. But yeah, I'm struggling with that one, to be honest.
No, good. All right, let's get more feedback as we go. Nicole Lowe, what did you make of those 4 pitches?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with the other panelists. I think they all could have been a little bit more tech specific. I think a lot of them took the opportunity to talk about sort of general areas of their manifestos, but they really could have looked deeper into what that means for the tech sector. And I think that's really, really important. They need to have a separate tech manifesto, look at the policy recommendations and really think about what that means and what they can do.
So what's an example, Nicole, of something you would have liked more on that detail front?
So I think I would have liked to hear more about talent. So a number of them mentioned, you know, investment into digital skills at the moment. But actually, I think it was only Louisa who spoke about immigration policy and how we can be attracting talent from around the world as well. And demand is really, really high for jobs in London, and we want to maintain that. We want to make sure that we can fulfil those roles as well.
Yeah, got it. Amali, not renowned for holding back. Tell us what you thought of the pitches.
I think, Ollie, I'm definitely preaching to the choir here. I was left a little bit underwhelmed. I really was, and I think very much sort of agreeing with everyone else who's spoken so far. I think the things which really struck out to me as things which weren't covered were, it's all well and good, I think, the mayoral office looking at their own programs, looking at, you know, things that they could do specifically as sort of, you know, programs or initiatives. We didn't hear anything about partnering with the tech ecosystem. We didn't hear about mobilizing them in a way to allow them to do more than just the mayor's office can do. And I think that role in, supporting, whether it's funding, whether it's, creating the right environment for those companies to be successful, we didn't hear enough about that. And I think going to probably some of the points which I think we've heard from some of our social mentions already, skilling young people, and I say this as sort of, putting on my Code First Girls hat, absolutely, it needs to be about young people, but it also needs to be about older people as well. We are looking down the barrel of this post-pandemic environment. We have a narrow window to really think about how we can make sure people have the skills, when we've got furlough, money's coming out and stuff like that. And I think that was, for me, a really lost opportunity there. And the other thing, which I think just goes to sort of a general point, it won't be enough to just be champions. I would love to have seen a little bit more detail around, what are those strategics, what are those initiatives that we can do, and building on the stuff which has been built before and having that owned by the tech community so that it can continue on even after the mayor is in place and kind of beyond that community as well.
Right. So on this then, Amali, talking about cross-sector collaboration, Sean was getting quite into his paving slabs, wasn't he? Down Oxford Street. We can see him tripping the light. Fantastic. Not good enough for you?
I think more ambition is needed, and don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely for, I think, finding better ways of including renewable energy into London. But that's just one thing. We are not going to solve the climate sort of crisis within London, or really look at, meeting those big government targets, which we've seen more about this week, with just having paving stones in London. We need to be engaging with the businesses who are driving these technologies and creating a good environment for them to do business, creating them a good environment to win better customers and to work with each other, raising their profile. So all of those things, I think we just need something a bit more ambitious, to really think about creating a better environment overall.
All right. And on ambitious, Phil, you say Brexit's behind us, but some of the candidates spoke quite clearly to the fact we're still feeling the aftermath. No deal on services, lots of untied up loose ends still to go. Too early to move on. You seem to have rushed over that, Phil.
No, I think certainly Brexit is going to have repercussions for years to come. Now, obviously, as innovators, as entrepreneurs, we need to use it as an opportunity to try to do what we can. And I think you can't shirk over the challenges that Brexit is having or is going to have in the future. And that's why I think we needed that bolder vision, because if supposedly that we're going to be more freer outside of Europe and be able to do more deals and all the rest of it, then surely we have a vision for saying what that's going to look like. And I think at the moment we don't have, there's a bit of a vacuum there, and we've got communities who have been left behind. Now, we're not just talking about moral case. I'm saying, how can we harness community value? When we're talking about the smart city space, how do we use our community to inform our decisions, to make sure that citizen approached, connected communities, everyone feels like they're engaged in that, because it's only through that we're able to push forward.
Right. Well, this, of course, might be music to the ears of the current Chief Digital Officer on user-led design. So let's talk about the incumbent, Sadiq Khan. Has he been a friend to tech? Amali, and let's be pithy about this because we've just got a few minutes left. So let's get something. To what extent has Sadiq Khan been a friend to tech? Amali, then Flavilla.
There definitely have been some good things. I mean, when we look at things like, the Mayor's International Business Programme that focuses and supports a lot of tech businesses, we have other programs around the investment and that side of things. I would like to see more. And I would like to see some real thinking about how we can anchor those programs into the businesses more widely, how we can activate partners to actually deliver more than that, so that it can kind of scale beyond the budget and the resources that we have available just with City Hall. Right,
got it. Flavilla, your brief verdict on the current mayor?
Yes, I think that, I agree with Amalie. I think he's proven himself. Hiring a chief digital officer has been his first step. But yes, there's a lot more to be done in here. And I think we haven't addressed the elephant in the room, which is the crisis we're in. How are we going to cope if COVID perdures? So what are we going to do about that? And that's something that we need to think about to make sure that, technology has been a driver, but there's more that needs to be done to make sure that we can continue growth, growth can continue despite that we are still in a crisis.
Right. So Flavilla, has he done enough to get your support, or is it time for a fresh bit of thinking?
I think that, sometimes you need more than one term to do a big job. And I'm going to give him again the benefit of the doubt on that. There's a long journey ahead of us. That's, some of the problems require more than one term. And he's there. So why not carry on?
Interesting, right? Well, that's one view. Nicole Lowe, you've seen firsthand the work of London and Partners. What do you think of the mayor's term so far? And give him another sort of word of encouragement, shall we say?
Yeah, I would agree with my fellow panelists. I think there has been a lot of brilliant things that have gone on so far, but there's so much more to do. And if we watch back that video, he spoke a lot about what he has done, which is great, but there wasn't a huge amount of action plan about what is to come. And I would really like to see some more bold claims about what he wants to do and what change he can drive. So I'd really encourage him to think about that.
Okay, well, there's a concern here for some viewers, Phil, on bold claims, on big visions, that they might be setting themselves up for a fall. How do you rate Sadiq, and what's your word in the ear of all the candidates?
Yeah, I think, certainly, like in any walk of life, you need to have bold visions, because where do you aspire to and where do you aspire to go? And I think it's important to say, look, this is what we want to achieve, and what are the foundations? How do we get to that point? And I think without that, then, we don't feel riled to be able to really make things happen. So, I think making bold claims, but obviously it has to be backed up. It has to be backed up by evidence. It has to be backed up by what the tech sector really can offer. And I think the tech sector, as I said, is going to be there at the heart of our recovery as part of COVID. So engaging with every single facet of the tech sector, from SMEs right up to corporate, we need to really look at that fundamentally and make sure that Sadiq Khan or whoever is going to be the next mayor is engaged thoroughly within that context.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. That is a very good note to end it on. But for now, to Flavilla, to Nicole, to Phil, and of course to Amali, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Very good to see you indeed. Short panels, 15 minutes, but what a tough crowd. They are not yet inspired and convinced. But what about the people writing the big checks into London's tech businesses, the investors? And indeed, first of all, and more importantly, what about you? What are you making of all of this? Please keep your thoughts coming on the hashtag London Tech Manifesto. Here you go. D-Rit says, it was definitely a bit fluffy. It's our word that's come up again. Many did not answer the questions. Some went off on their own agenda. Who would have thought? And some decided to repeat themselves to fill the time. Unimpressed. That could be DR. That might be some initials there, but thank you, whoever you are. Right. Let's bring in some of our leading investors. Let's welcome them to the screen. I'll tell you who's here. How great to see Bindi. Bindi Karia is one of London Tech's best known figures and is an innovation advisor. She sits on the advisory board of Tech London Advocates. She's a venture partner with Draper Esprit and, of course, many other good things. Nice to see you, Bindi. Very good. We'll get you up on there, Bindi. Thank you. Dharma Satyanathan is a partner of Bethnal Green Ventures, and Dharma, when I hear that, I think particularly early stage tech for good venture capital. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. We want your take on all the above. Debu Perkayastha. How lovely to see you, Debu. How are you, sir?
Great to see you, Ollie.
Well, you've worked with Google, with Octopus Ventures, you advise the World Economic Forum, Unilever, the University of Cambridge and others, and of course the University Hospital Birmingham NHS Trust Foundation, but you're also a managing partner at VC firm Third Eye. Thank you, Debu, for joining us. Henry, good day to you, sir. Henry Warwood. Well, how can you not know Bowhurst? They are the sort of deal collators, aren't they? He's the head of research and consultancy at Bowhurst, the data platform for the UK's fastest growing companies. Henry, hello.
Hi, Ollie. Good to see you.
Good to see you. By no means least, Stephen Nundy is a partner at Lakestar, and you also serve as their CTO. You specialize in deep technology, digitization, and automation. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon.
Now, let's get into it. What did you think? Dharma, then Stephen. I'll ask for a pithy start to this, and then we'll dig a bit further in. But Dharma, off we go.
Yeah, short and sweet. It's great to see that the majority of the candidates are actually also committed to increasing access to capital to tech entrepreneurs who are building purpose-driven businesses. London has a track record and a really healthy sort of tech-for-good ecosystem, but what it misses a lot is a lot of investment at the early stages. So I would have liked to see more commitment, or at least more concrete actions in terms of what that looks like, and actually creating that sort of enabling environment for purpose-driven tech. But yeah, hopefully we'll see some actions once the new mayor is in place. The other thing which is interesting to sort of see is the sort of increased care and advocacy for more diversity in tech, which is a huge problem still, and has sort of increased with better performance at companies as well, but there's huge potential to actually look into leveraging open data from companies as well. So yeah, those are just very snappy and short.
Yeah, they were indeed. No, fantastic, very interesting, and an opportunity there for DFL, Data for London, one of the recommendations in the manifesto. Stephen, tell us your thoughts.
I thought one of the things that jumped out for me is Sadiq talked a little bit about the Greater London Investment Fund, which was set up a couple of years ago, 100 million. And I think for those of us who are investors now, 100 million doesn't go very far these days. And for us to talk about that as a kind of a beacon of hope that's 2 years old now, when over half of that money came from Europe, and now in a post-Brexit world, I think it actually raises a lot more questions as to how the London Mayor is really going to think about funding from within government to help these young startups, as just been mentioned, rather than talking about 2-year-old investment fund projects that are now outdated and outsized, given the rounds of funding that the best startups now need.
Right, and what do you say, Stephen, to someone who says, look, City Hall should be saving its money to keep the capital moving, to fund housing, to fund the police, not investing in startups and scale-ups? That's your job. What do you say to them?
I think, London is just one city within the UK. And I think, I see the mayor as the CEO of London. And so he or she should be working with the other CEOs of the other big cities around the UK. And I think, yes, we're here talking about London today, but really we're talking about the UK more broadly. Yeah. And, I really do feel that therefore he or she has a responsibility to work with government and connect those dots and make sure the right funding is getting to the right cities and the right places in the UK.
Yeah, okay, but let me get you back on the question, which is, would you like to see the Mayor of London, City Hall, investing in tech companies? That seemed to be what you're suggesting.
No, I'm suggesting that they should be championing the creation of more funding sources for London-based and other city-based startups.
Yeah, brilliant, really clear, thank you. Bindi, what did you make of the 4 videos?
I've got a lot of notes that I've scribbled here. And I think I'm gonna try be nice, but in my Canadian British way, I don't think most of our candidates were ambitious enough. I think we need to be much more ambitious. So we did talk a little bit about global, and certainly the current mayor's comments on being global and international were there. And Louisa did comment a bit about EU and blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is, Sifted today published an article saying Berlin is the most attractive startup ecosystem right now compared to London. But actually, despite that, London has twice as much VC investment. And that kind of irks me. And what is our mayor going to do? Or he or she, what are they going to do to really, help us continue to be ambitious and global? Because the fact of the matter is, we're in BST. We're in a central time zone. So many people have mentioned in previous panels, we're in a really good location, regulation, HQs, city, facilities, the works to be and continue to be a global hub. But we're rapidly dropping. So I think that's the first thing, is how do we, focus on that? Secondly, I noticed a lot of the candidates were really focused on the grassroots, which is, I understand a lot of the questioning was about that and about digital skills. And I'm on the board of governors for University of East London, and absolutely digital skills and basically educating and making sure our student base is able to jump into the job market, of which digital skills are key. But I didn't hear enough mention of the scale-ups and the unicorns and just some of the incredible tech companies that are what is part of London and why they've launched here. There just wasn't enough acknowledgement of that. And, with the growth VC hat on, with the Draper Esprit hat on, we focus on big ticket rounds, and so many of those deals come through London. And I really would like to see that, you know, more of an acknowledgement of the success we've achieved. And then finally, last comment would be, we're an amazing ecosystem here. So we did talk a lot about the grassroots and digital skills, but let's talk about the people that support the entrepreneurs, what the government is doing, but what about what corporates are doing, and you know, what other parts of the ecosystem are doing. So to me, it didn't really feel like we're acknowledging what this whole ecosystem was about. And that's just something I bang on about. So those are kind of the things I noticed off the bat.
Very helpful. Well, someone who's worked with some global corporates, Debu, you're now investing, but what did you make of our pitches today?
So Ollie, you asked us to be pithy, so I'll keep it really pithy. So pure headline is spectacularly unambitious, you know, even at the soundbite level. It is the way I would say it.
Well, tell me a bit more then, because of course, you know, no politician wants to lead with their chin only to find themselves, you know, having egg on their face. What sort of ambition? You've heard about taking on climate change. You've heard about skills. Give us a sense, if you were advising them, what sort of language, what sort of ambition would you be encouraging in them?
So as an investor, and if you look at it, you invest primarily, as an early stage investor, you invest primarily in people. And the raw material you're using is funding. And then the two, in a sort of, in a thing that you're always seeking is really robust, high quality tech infrastructure and regulation. So that's the hygiene factor that you're really looking for, right? Those two are a given. The first two are what you're really looking at. And if I were advising, all I'd be saying is pick two areas that you really think are important out of these four and give one bold vision. You don't have to even give two, just give one. Right? It doesn't matter what it is, just give it, because that's the lodestone. That's what people are looking for. And that sets a marker in regards to what you want to do. So it could be talent, which everybody talked about, but nobody has come up with, say, the silver bullet for that. Or it could be funding, or it could be infrastructure. Pick one and just have a big, bold vision on that. That's what I'd be saying, because that's what people will remember. People will never remember the, you know, those, you know, 10 different points.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it, Henry? Because we're getting a lot of the substance here, but we're also getting a bit of a communications masterclass as well in terms of how these leaders share their messages. What did you make of it?
I'm going to try and be a little bit more positive, because I was relieved to see at least the candidates suggesting that they were going to carry on the same good work that has already been done, especially by the likes of London partners. So I think Sadiq said he was going to continue shouting from the rooftop. Sean wanted to use the convening power of City Hall to bring investors together. And even Louisa said that she might start doing missions to Israel to try and see what can be learned from the ecosystem there. And there has been a lot of positive work. It's very, very far reaching. I was on a mission the other day that was trying to connect American and USA LGBTQ founders with people in the tech ecosystem in London. There's a lot of programs going on, and at least it was hinted in those manifestos that that work was going to carry on. And I think that's at least part why we've got such a good ecosystem at the moment. Like the figures are good, and so I don't want anyone to rest on their laurels, but in Q1, we saw a record amount of funding to London tech companies. But we need to keep on doing the work that's already there. I agree that maybe even more ambitious goals around what the candidates are looking to achieve in that arena would be good, but at least no one was going to undo.
No, got it. No, thank you very much. That's Henry Warwood from Bowhurst. Okay, so to all of you, help me understand, because we want London and the UK to be magnetic for international investors. Do any of you think that a mayor of London has a role to play in magnetizing the capital and other cities? You've seen this firsthand, Bindi.
I would say yes and no. And what I mean by that is the good investors will always find the good investments. They'll know who the good companies are because we talk amongst each other and we understand our deal flow. I think what the mayor of London needs to do is just make it easy for the founders to operate here. Remove any barrier to make them operate here, to allow them to grow and scale here. You know, from Debu's comments about the right infrastructure and technology to talent. So remove those barriers. And I think it's those things that the Mayor of London can focus on, The good investors will find the good investments.
Right.
It doesn't matter where they're located, if they're in London or if they're in different parts of the UK.
Very briefly then on that, how confident are you that London companies, tech companies, have all that they need to attract talent from anywhere in the world? And if they don't have what they need, what can the mayor do to change that? Will anyone give me a view on that?
I think it comes back down to talent. Look, you know, let's be honest. I'm investing in Berlin. We've got an office in Berlin. We've got an office in Zurich. When I look at London companies, we're giving money to London founders. They're attracting talent, but they're having to now open up tech offices outside of the UK, which is perverse, right? So we're investing in pounds. The pounds then getting FX into euros, and then we're buying tech teams in Lisbon. So what is London doing to maintain the growth in London, or in the UK at least?
Yeah, it's a great point, because actually, if you think about it, presumably so much happens with the Home Office, but that doesn't mean, Debu, that the Mayor of London can't actively campaign on immigration, for example.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. If I were the Mayor of London, number one thing I'd focus on is talent visas for the widest possible candidate pool. Literally, funding, actually, you don't need to do much as a London mayor. The other thing that I would do, which I know that the Mayor of London cannot directly fully influence, is working on the infrastructure, right? These are the two primary things I would focus on as London mayor. And I realize that not all of it is in your hands, but you can sure as anything else, really lobby hard and get that part done.
And very briefly, Debu, if we click the zoom on that infrastructure point, where are you taking us to? Are you taking us to, is it, e-scooter mobility? What infrastructure?
So number one, 5G. Number two is gigabit Ethernet. Fundamentally, these two things.
Yeah.
All right, Bindi, briefly add to that list for me.
For tech, I think I would just echo what Debu said. Make it easy. I think it's as simple as that.
All right. Now, Dharma, can I ask you, how are we going to make London a global city, particularly for climate tech? And that we could talk for an hour about that, but specifically, what can a mayor do to boost that process?
I mean, a lot of the challenges that early stage ventures are facing when it comes to building climate tech businesses that are also being adopted by the users and customers they have is really focused on R&D, so research and development. So seeing pockets of money specifically designed for programs that enable easier research and development processes at that early stage as well, through, I don't know, partnerships, for example, with climate tech focused investors or climate tech focused research institutes across London as well, would already be a huge step up in enabling in creating that, again, that sort of enabling environment for startups to thrive.
Yeah, very powerful. So that's Dharma from Bethnal Green Ventures. Finally, in our final minute, I'm going to encourage you to put a tweet-sized final thought to me, your message that ought to be ringing in the ears of the next Mayor of London, whoever she or he may be. Dharma, then Stephen, and let's just rattle through these in our final minutes together. Dharma.
Final thoughts would be progress for the sake of progress shouldn't come at the expense of people and planet. So if we're taking on the politicians' narrative of building back better, it should also focus on building back better with a lens on climate resiliency, particularly when it comes to the city context. So hopefully more ambitious founders that can use their skills to building tech for good businesses, and more investment in the space as well, not just at the early stages, but also up to sort of scale up and internationally.
Got it. Thank you, Dharma. That was a Twitter thread, but it was a very good one. Thank you, Stephen.
One thing we haven't talked about is how can the mayor help these startups actually find their first customers? And so I would employ him or her to actually work with corporates in the city to make them use these startups and not be afraid to take the risk.
Excellent. Well, Bindi Currier, once crowned queen of startups, give us your one-liner.
Time to think of scaling, be more ambitious, continue to be global.
Love it. Thank you, Henry. Thank you for your pithiness as well. Henry.
I would say investment and foreign direct investment isn't just a sort of obscure financial force, but it creates jobs and innovation. And so anything to leverage that is good.
Yeah, excellent. And by no means least, Debu.
Be a cheerleader for getting the best people into London. Funding will automatically follow. Just keep it really simple.
Yeah, Love it. Really powerful. Thank you to each and every one of you. These are some of the world's, frankly, leading investors, and I'm very grateful to them all. And indeed, thank you to Bohurst for powering so many of the insights that we have on deals happening across the capital and beyond. But thank you to each and every one of you. And thank you for sending in your tweets and observations, positive and in many cases not impressed. London Tech Manifesto is the hashtag. Ian McCalvert, as an outsider looking in on London Tech Manifesto, I'd go for Sean Bailey, says Ian, trying or edging with Sian Berry, the Green Party candidate, then Louisa Porritt, and last, Sadiq Khan. There you go. Praise not forthcoming there. That's just one view. Kiki Onawinde, meanwhile, says, sadly, not a single candidate left a mark. Brutal from Kiki. It was their chance to convince the London tech ecosystem to vote for them, and they didn't. Oh, Kiki's put that down as a missed opportunity. But the interesting thing is, our next guests have a connection with literally millions of readers because they write for some of our leading publications. So why don't we welcome up our final panel, some of our leading voices. Good day to you, each and every one. And it's good because I normally see their sort of little face on the page or on the website. So it's great to see Amy Lewin, who's the deputy editor at Sifted, which is obviously the online magazine backed by the FT, but covering European startups, really. Amy, welcome.
Hi.
Now, do you bristle when I say startups? Because I read you covering scale-ups as well. Have I got the sense of it?
No, I think focusing on startups is good. It's when it's like the really big tech companies, then that's not really my jam.
Okay, got it, understood. Angharad Carrick is a private equity and investment reporter at City AM, well, I would say daily, but it's sort of 24/7, isn't it, Angharad? But welcome, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And someone whose opinions I've read for many years is Jim Arbitage. He's the deputy business editor at the world famous Evening Standard. Hello to you, Jim.
You just relegated me. I'm actually the business editor. Maybe you know something.
Well, I'm terribly sorry. You've not read the news. Oh, what a bit of bad luck. No, far from it. I'm terribly sorry. I should.
No problem.
I apologize. You're the business editor. Well, let's start with you, Jim. What was your take on the candidates' responses?
Oh, you know, I was so hoping to be positive. I like to be positive where I can, but I'm really struggling. You know, London is the greatest city in the world. This is the opportunity to be the chief executive of the most important, buzziest, most brilliant and vibrant city in the world, with the greatest universities, the greatest corporations, the greatest capital depth. And I just didn't see any of that enthusiasm in any of the candidates here. What I wanted to see was kind of salesmanship, that kind of love of technology and enthusiasm for technology, plus detail. And I just felt that there was not enough detail and certainly not enough enthusiasm and love.
Yeah. So Jim, you know some of these characters, at least you observe them on a weekly basis. What if someone said to you, look, what's happened here, Jim, is they have got that vision. They just had a bad game. They're quite busy. They've put together those videos and you didn't actually see the full range of substance and vision that we all know exists. What do you say to that?
Well, yeah, I don't think that cuts with me, to be honest, particularly Sadiq Khan. I mean, considering this is a tech event, right? So the leading tech people in the city, he couldn't even get his tech to work. I mean, I found that like extraordinarily amateurish for the incumbent mayor. You know, he's got resources at hand. He's got people who can sort of sort this stuff for him. He's not there sitting on his own in a garret, you know, with a million other plates to spin. I was really disappointed, and I'm very disappointed that I was so disappointed.
All right, so point taken, right? And just to be absolutely clear, those particular videos, a couple of them came whistling in at the last minute. So let me say from the team's perspective, if any tech was wobbling, it might not be on the part of the person who sent it, although we would have loved them a bit sooner, but that's all right. Angharad Carrick, what did you make of what you heard today?
I mean, look, I don't want to rehash too much of what's already been said, but you know, it's good to hear them talking about tech. because I can't say it's been front and center of their campaigns, to be perfectly honest. You know, when you look on Sadiq and Sean's websites, I mean, I was digging for tech and I could not find it anywhere. So, I mean, this is, you know, the videos that they sent are kind of indicative of that. It's all a bit non-committal, you know, they're sort of shoehorning it into the housing and policing. So yeah, pretty disappointed. There are a couple of good nuggets in there. I think Sadiq was the only one to mention the kind of regulatory environment, which, you know, shows that he's got a bit of an idea as to what's going on. But yeah, I mean, it's all just a bit thin on the ground, I think.
Right, and Harold, why do you think that is? Can I just ask you? You said you had to do some digging. It sounds like it's low in the mix. I guess the interesting question is why? What's your theory?
Well, I mean, you know, housing and TfL, that's their sort of, that's been the big thing that they've been fighting for, you know, the last 4 years. And I understand that. And especially, you know, when it comes to the recovery, jobs is going to be the really, really important part of that. But so is tech. And, you know, this tech manifesto, I mean, did any of them read it? Like, there are so many great ideas in there and we didn't hear any of it. We didn't hear about diversity. You know, I'm really, really disappointed, especially with Sadiq, because he does engage with Tech London advocates and Tech UK. And, you know, it seems like he just didn't really have a clue as to what's going on.
Right, okay, brutal, crikey, sharpening the pens for tomorrow's headlines. Amy Lewin, surely you will take a slightly brighter, cheerier approach. A's all round.
No, I'm afraid that's definitely a C- for basically all of them. I think I'm assuming if you compare this to how they approached some other sectors, you know, if they were talking to the banks, for example, I think they probably have done their homework a bit better. And given that tech is where loads of the job growth comes from and loads of the innovation that helps us get through things like a coronavirus crisis, it should have a lot, you know, they should be putting a lot more headspace to this.
Okay, so we hear that loud and clear, but Amy, I put it to you that the good stuff is there. If we look at TfL, how it's shared data, enabling platforms like Citymapper, maybe they just got to get organized and communicate better. Or are you doubting some of the substance behind the words?
I don't think they've thought hard about much of this at all. There were very few kind of tangible policies. I thought Sean, one thing I'm report on quite a lot and I'm pretty passionate about is bringing more people into the tech sector. You know, it's an area where you do not have to go to university. You can learn skills from your bedroom. There are just enormous opportunities to fill the jobs that plenty of startups are advertising and can't fill, with people who have grown up literally, you know, a cycle ride away from the city. But, you know, the programs and the support isn't there at the moment, you know, and you can see it in the diversity of the employees at these companies. You know, they don't reflect London as a whole. And I think, you know, you could do there could be so much, there's so much scope there, and it was like barely even touched upon.
Okay, got it. So Jim, as the business editor of the Evening Standard, let me read a few headlines back to you. Too soft on crime, Crossrail delays, TfL cash crisis. So those are all recent Standard headlines about Sadiq Khan. So let's just be blunt. Where do you stand on his performance?
My big problem with him primarily has been, I don't think that he talks enough and listens enough to business, to the chief execs of the biggest corporations and the biggest utility companies, Thames Water, the likes of that make the city tick. I don't think he really listens to them. I don't think he's that interested in them. He did get better, in fairness, as this term has progressed. Initially, all he seemed to do was go to GQ parties and get photographed on, you know, in glamorous locations with beautiful people. He did get better, and I think his substance has got better. But I think there is a lot to prove for the next term. And the difficulty for him, of course, is that we're in this horrific recession that is going to stymie him of resources. And I think it was a little bit unfair of some of your investors to criticize him for not pledging more money. You know, he doesn't got any money, you know. So that's why I think it's so important that he builds those relations with those that do have money, i.e. the corporations, the investment banks, the universities. We need collaboration with those organizations to build tech and to sort of steer investment into these areas that we all want. You know, we all want our kids to have better education in tech. We all want more opportunities for those who haven't been to university, but the funding has to come from the private sector. And the mayor's job, he's got limited powers, but he can steer things in the right direction using those levers. As I say, I think it's really.
So, Jim, just to be clear though, when these private companies, maybe tech companies, start funding the education of your and my children, are you not going to write an article criticizing them, saying, why on earth are they reaching through the school gates, they should back off?
Not at all. Absolutely not. I think it's got to be done delicately. I don't think they're necessarily tech companies, by the way. I'm just talking about big companies. All companies are tech companies, let's be honest. You know, whether you're in insurance or engineering or whatever, you're a tech company. I think we should be doing far more of reaching out from our companies into our schools, as they do in, everyone talks about it, as they do in Germany, you know, and as they do increasingly in America. So no, I don't think there'd be any cynicism.
Right. Got it. Thank you. Amy, give us your sense of the current mayor and sort of, you know, channel some of the views that you pick up through your readers.
I'm not sure people really think about what the mayor is up to. I know that he has done some things for diversity in tech. He supported some communities that I'm a part of, and I've seen that. But other than that, no, no views come to me on the mayor.
Now, and we could think about why that is. Do you have a view as sifted on how the mayor has done, or do you think, will you have other things to report on?
Well, we cover the whole of Europe, I guess. There's always this ongoing battle between London and other cities. And as someone pointed out earlier, you know, there are plenty of reasons why people might head elsewhere now. So I think making sure that kind of visas are very easy and fast for companies to get hold of. You know, if you spend more than a month waiting for a visa for an employee, like your company's already at a different stage. That is super, super slow in startup land. Like this stuff needs to be easier. Otherwise, people will go to Paris, they will go to Berlin. You know, these cities are putting effort into attracting companies, and now that, you know, investors have learned that they can invest over Zoom, that there is a bit less of a gravitational pull towards London. It is still like streaks ahead of other places, but you know, if we're not careful, that lead could disappear.
Interesting. So not to rest on any laurels, Angharad, give us the City AM view on the current mayor.
I mean, as a lowly reporter, I certainly can't speak for City AM, but on a personal one, I mean, I'd have to echo what Jim said. I mean, you know, if you look at Sadiq's Twitter feed, for example, you know, he constantly puts up videos where he's going to, you know, schools and, you know, a range of places. And, you know, I don't really see that same commitment to business and tech specifically. You know, the London is Open campaign was, you know, had a really, really good intentions. It's a really great slogan. I'm not sure, you know, how much has been done there.
Well, let me tell you, just out of interest, what about, if you look at that pie of funding, you have a sliver in there for City Hall itself, but also London and Partners, the business promotion agency running missions, all sorts of different programs. To what extent has that impressed you?
Yeah, I think that has been good, and I think the problem is that quite often Sadiq is just a really bland quote at the end of a press release, and I don't see that, you know, excitement in him. And you know, I'm not sure how he gets that across. Maybe doing a better video that he sends to us, but you know, I just don't get the impression that he's particularly interested, unless it kind of fits his sort of narrative.
Yeah, and interesting. And Jim, when you hear our business leaders calling for bigger, bolder ambition, bigger goals, you know, are you to what extent are you concurring with that, or does that just make it easier, forgive the cliche, for the media to knock them down, to cut down the tall poppy?
No, I don't think that's. I think he absolutely should be making big, bold, or not he. They should all be making bigger, bolder, more salesmanship, more razzmatazz. This is the biggest show in London at the moment. What have we got? We've got Sadiq Khan looking like he's about to you know, the condemned man kind of look that he's got on his face. It should be about showmanship and making bold promises. You know, that's what an election campaign's about.
Got it. So more razzmatazz. What a great word. Amy, and finally, Angharad, your final message back to the candidates. Shape up sounds to be the message, but Amy, put it as bluntly as you like.
Just actually speak to some people who work in the tech sector, go and visit some startups, speak to some of these people at Tech London Advocates, you know, get your head around what's going on here and realise that this is an enormous opportunity for the whole country and like quite a good thing for brand Britain post-Brexit.
Interesting. Well, we will hear what Russ Shaw, the founder of Tech London Advocates, thinks of that rallying call very shortly. Angharad, finally, your message back to those candidates.
Yeah, I'd have to say, you know, engage with the issues, meet with Tech London Advocates. Don't forget the investment community. You know, it's really great to go and see startups in their sexy offices, but, you know, speak to the investors. And also don't see other cities as competitors, you know, work with them across Europe and also across the UK.
Yeah, and there's a brilliant idea in the manifesto about a sort of cities forum being the convener, being the magnet, which I know will get attention. Angharad, Amy, Jim, thank you so much for joining us, and all strength to you in all that you're doing. Thank you very much indeed. That's our final panel discussion on this conversation around who will be the next Mayor of London. Well, somebody who you heard from right at the beginning of the event, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back live. It is Russ Shaw, of course, the founder of Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates. Hello, Russ. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Ali, and congrats on hosting a great event. So great to see you live.
Well, I'm very interested, Russ, thank you for being here, to hear your take on all of this, because I see you as a positive, glass half full individual. And those candidates got a hell of a pasting just now, and there wasn't praise all round. So what did you make of it?
Yeah, I have to concur with our panelists, who I thought all three panels were bang on with their messages, with the examples. Look, I heard some really good ideas from all of the candidates. Don't get me wrong. There are some, you know, good thoughts in there, good ways to deal with some issues. That is not to be taken for granted. However, I think there was a significant missed opportunity here. These candidates and their campaign teams received this manifesto a few weeks ago. It's not like it came through the door yesterday. They had ample time to prepare up to an 8-minute video. We gave them some questions, but frankly, they could have come in and said, this is my vision, this is my articulation of what I think about the London tech sector and where I want to take it. And sadly, I don't think any of the candidates really stepped up to the mark. And maybe I'm being generous in that comment, given what everybody else has just talked about. The thing that really, you know, if you look back, Ali, we were together 5 years ago for Debate Tech. Look at how London tech has grown and evolved in the 5 years, even with Brexit, even with the pandemic. Yes, we have huge challenges about diversity and inclusion in the tech sector. We have issues around digital infrastructure, no doubt about that. We've got to get to 5G and high-speed fiber. But this city is consistently ranked as a top 5 tech hub globally, ranked alongside Silicon Valley and Shanghai and New York. And we need to have leadership that has that bold and visionary thinking on how to engage with the tech sector, how to use it for economic growth. We have over 700,000 digital and tech workers in Greater London, according to the recent Tech Nation report. We were at 300,000, 3 or 4 years ago. So the job growth itself is phenomenal. We've got tech unicorns listing on the London Stock Exchange, on the NASDAQ. The money flowing in from investors globally is dramatic. So tech and digital is really remaking the London scene, the London stage. And I don't think we heard the commensurate level of thinking and vision from our candidates today. And they had an opportunity to do that, and they didn't take that opportunity.
Okay, now very briefly, Russ, that is crystal clear. What if you were casting your eye over the report card of Sadiq and, of course, the Chief Digital Officer over the last few years? Give us a sense of that, because you have been very supportive over the last few years. Let's not ignore that.
No, and look, I have been very supportive of our mayor. You know, he embraced our community right from day one. He's been very good on digital skills, and he spoke about that in his remarks today. I'm a huge fan of Theo Blackwell. I think that's been a very, very important and significant appointment of an outstanding Chief Digital Officer. And the work that Theo is doing on data for London, on setting up the London Office of Technology and Innovation, or LOTI as it's called, this is first-class stuff. And Theo has also done a great job connecting with other mayors and other leaders in cities around the world. So, you know, look, maybe we didn't hear some of those words today that we should have, but I think there has been a good track record so far. Going forward, you know, the mountain is getting bigger to climb, because we're now up there with all of these other major league hubs. And that's where I'd like to hear more from the mayor in terms of what role our sector can play to really help ensure that we remain on the stage as a world-leading tech hub, and let's hope that whether it's the mayor, the current mayor, or one of the other candidates who wins, that they really embrace the sector.
Yeah. Now, speaking of global connections, just give us a glimpse of what's coming up from Tech London advocates, but also global tech advocates. What's in store?
Sure. Well, thank you, Ali. But maybe before I do that, if I can just jump in and say a few more thank yous. Obviously, to all of the candidates for participating, to all of the speakers on the panel, and to everybody who watched us online. There's been stuff all over Twitter all afternoon, so really great to see that level of engagement. Want to thank Here East as our headline sponsor. Great to hear Gavin's message earlier today. They've been a tremendous supporter of Tech London Advocates right from day one. And for all of the delivery partners for London Tech Manifesto, Centre for London, Tech UK, London First, Plexel, all contributed to this. And as I said in my opening video, we started work on this 18 months ago, and we had to postpone things because the election's not until next month. I also want to take an opportunity to thank all of our TLA and GTA partners and sponsors who helped make this possible through their generosity. You know, that includes Shoesmiths, Credit Suisse, Pennington's Manchas Cooper, Hiscox, Russell Reynolds, Centigroup, KPMG, Interaction, HP, Lakestar, and Globalization Partners. So I hope I've got everybody on that list. And coming to your question about what's next, in the next few weeks, we are getting ready to launch a new online magazine called GTA Connects, or Global Tech Advocates Connects. This is a platform that will bring together all of our Global Tech Advocates communities, where we will share articles, we will share interviews from tech leaders around the world. And I'm really, really excited about this. We've got now over 11,000 Tech London advocates around the world. We've got 20,000 global tech advocates. So it's going to be a very important platform for us, and everybody will hear about it through their newsletter coming out fairly soon. We're also going to launch our Tech for Net Zero campaign, and this is going to showcase startups and scale-ups who are doing phenomenal work addressing climate change, especially as we look towards the COP26 climate change conference coming to Glasgow in November. As part of that, we will host our next Investor Showcase 3.0, on the 30th of June at Here East. So for everybody watching and listening, please put that in your diaries, and we'll share more information with you soon about that. And then I'm really excited. We've got a lot of new groups in Global Tech Advocates getting ready to launch this year. Next week, on the 30th of April, I'm delighted to announce that Tech India Advocates will launch. This will be our 19th group in the Global Tech Advocates community. It'll be a significant virtual event. We will have people in Bangalore, Mumbai, London, and Manchester all coming together for the launch of that event. So do sign up for that. Don't forget, I brought my little book here. Don't forget to vote on the 6th of May. If you're in London, as I am, it's, you know, whether you liked or didn't like what you heard today, vote. That's a really key aspect of why we're here today, is to inform all of you about what the candidates think. I usually say at this point at our in-person events, Ali, as you know, is this phrase we've used for over the years: we champion, we connect, we support, and our journey continues. And I think that continues today as it did 8 years ago when we launched TLA. And I also just wanted to say a final thank you to you, Ali, for hosting and moderating this. You're absolutely brilliant, keeping everybody to time and focused on the messages and asking the honest questions that we needed to have asked. It was 8 years ago this very month that you joined me and about 75 other advocates to launch Tech London Advocates. And just look at where London Tech is today. So if I kind of think where we're going to be in the next 8 years, with the right leadership, both from the business community, from the investor community, and hopefully from both our mayoral candidates and our government, we're going to continue to be a world-leading tech hub and tech ecosystem. So thank you, my friend, for all that you do, and really back over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Russ. That means a lot. That's Russ Shaw, founder of the Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates. Well, I think my conclusion from today is if we're going to solve the problems worth solving, if we're going to have fruitful cross-sector collaborations, we have to be prepared to have robust conversations. And today has shown that front and center. Two things. I commend to you the Tech London Manifesto. It's full of good thinking and good ideas, 12 specific recommendations, not just about hard power, but about campaigning, about soft power as well. That's the London Tech Manifesto. But also, if you've enjoyed today, please use our hashtag London Tech Manifesto, share this recording, share the word, keep that conversation going. So to everyone who's contributed, thank you. To you for tuning in, thank you. Let's see what happens on May the 6th. But for now, and until next time, goodbye.